All right, so welcome to the campfire. This is going to be a lot of fun. It's kind of cool that we've got somebody in common that we both know, and that conversation with Eric. I mean, that was a lot of fun. It was a very interesting way to look at animal medicine, to be honest with you.
Definitely. And what was your animal?
So he said I was a shamanic humpback whale.
Okay. And you think?
I kind of correlate a little bit of it. I'm still kind of working it out to figure out how much it really truly applies. I see it more as I'm more aligned with maybe a goose or a deer. Definitely a deer because I definitely have a lot of experiences with them whenever I'm out. So I don't know. I've never encountered a humpback whale to be able to watch it.
But in terms of his personality types, did you match with the description of the humpback whale?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I think about what he told me, and then I think about the way that I kind of chart my own course through life nowadays.
Hmm.
I went through the experiences where it causes you to look at your life and decide it's time to make a change. And since then, that's all it's been is just blazing this very unique path that involves a lot of outdoor adventure, a lot of meditation, and just a lot of looking at things very differently.
Awesome. I wish I had this outdoor space to just meditate and ground myself in nature every day.
The funniest part about it though, as I got into it and I started looking at it, was I utilized all the different things that go into meditation while I was especially out hunting, but never thought of it in that perspective. I never thought about, yeah, I could have used the stillness or the time to sit and focus on my breathing to really work through things and find an understanding, slow things down, and ultimately take control and step out of that story of self suffering that we all live in and engage in so often.
It's interesting that you say that because I've found that a lot of my clients really struggle with meditation when we first start working together. And I always tell them like what brings you joy, what makes you happy? Because you're probably in a state of meditation when you're doing that thing. And it always brings me back to the Disney movie Soul, if you've seen that movie. When
Yeah,
everyone's in the like in their flow state, their soul state, and they're all kind of just meditating, I'm like, you just need to get to that point. For some people, that's dancing, that's singing, it's riding motorcycles, like whatever it is. We can all find some form of meditation. And yeah, that's definitely a true fact.
I can relate to that because a lot of the time people come to me with just the idea of adventure that is obviously tagged to getting out on a trail and hiking and
Mhm.
experience in the backcountry. But when we're walking through and we're going through the hike, I start talking about, walking meditation and walking them through that. They're like, I never thought of that. I never realized in the stride of enjoying this adventure or this point in time that I could really ground myself that solidly on the ground.
Yeah, I love walking meditations. It's also good for me because I have such an attention deficit disorder. So the act of walking and meditating and like trying to clear and just ground is really helpful for me when it's hard for me to like sit and meditate.
I love it when people come to me and they're like, they've got the attention deficit disorder, they got the hamster always running in the wheel on their brain. So they're like, there's no way you're going to get me to sit and meditate. And I'm like, let's walk a couple miles down this trail. By the time we stop, you're going to be so tired that you're going to not only enjoy the break, but you're going to realize how easy it is to just sit and be still. And then I take them through a guided meditation, and they're mind blown. They're like, I can't believe I actually accomplished that.
That's awesome. I did that and I try to do big hikes when I host retreats. I try to do like a really nice hike. We did that in Sedona. We hiked up the Red Rocks and then we stopped for like a really nice meditation and it's really grounding and it's really nice. Like I think people underestimate themselves constantly because they don't actually take the time to look at what is being asked at them. asked of them. And when they actually see, oh, I don't need to like quiet my mind, that's not what meditation is about, it becomes a lot easier.
It really does. You know, I remember my first couple of times trying to sit down to meditate after having an hour long disagreement with my counselor about the idea that it wasn't for me. I went out back and I picked up my crossbow and I started shooting, and I'm like, I'm doing every part of what she just said. I really don't like that, but it feels really, really good. So I started really thinking about how I could incorporate it. And again, I got caught up in the projecting like the stigmas that I had had about meditation. Like it looks so goofy, it's crazy. You're gonna have to shave your head. You're gonna have to get a chant CD, and all these stupid things. And then when I thought about where I could do it and be safe, that brought me out to nature. And I never really intended it to take like a spiritual sort of path, but that's where I found myself. I found myself realizing that even though I'm out here trying to connect with myself, there's something much more, there's something much greater that is brought me out here, and it's helping me to sort out all these really difficult challenges that I'm trying to figure out. And it became almost natural.
Yeah. I think one this I say this on every podcast that I'm on, but it's very important for me to say this. One thing about spirituality, I think that people don't take note of or that they misunderstand is that spirituality is literally just the study of yourself. I tell everyone, like, spirituality is not about crystals, it's not about candles, it's not about any of that stuff. It's hardly about all of the things that you see on like spirituality TikTok. It's literally just about the self. Learning how to be present with yourself in the moment, that's all spirituality is. So when you start engaging in meditation on a regular basis, you are inevitably in spirituality, right? So you are focused on the self, the breathing, how you relate to oneness and how you relate to the rest of the world. It is very egocentric, but I feel that that is kind of what spirituality is. So it makes sense for you to start following a broader path. Like for me, like I'm very into Buddhism. I find that to be my keeper, just like all of the ideas, ideologies, and all of the tactics and techniques that the Buddhists use to live good lives. That's kind of what I've followed because it helps you to stay in touch with yourself. And that is what I think everything is all about.
It does. The more that I've gone down this path, the more that I've realized that all the answers that I'm looking for really any question, whether it's a simple or a difficult one, it's already in me. I've already lived an experience that's helped me to build a vocabulary to be able to answer that. And I look at a lot of my spiritual connection with the outdoors as more of a uh, more of a way to build that vocabulary even deeper based off of living a book or living a story, because you're able to just sit, simply observe. And that observation, it's something that a lot of us take for granted in today's world because we're incentivized to keep on moving. But when you slow down and you start to observe, you pick up little patterns that you can discover within yourself, and you can decide if it's a good pattern or if it's an unhealthy one, and then you can adjust it accordingly.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I life is all about just revisiting old patterns, starting new, trying to make sure that we are always on a cycle of growth, right? And it's a lot. And that's why people don't want to do the work. But a lot of my clients are like, when does the healing end? But when do I need to stop doing this? And I'm like, honestly, never. And maybe that's bleak, but that's a part of being human.
it never does end. It just evolves, and
Right.
being willing to enjoy the ride, I think, is really one of the most essential parts of the human experience. You know, if you're caught up in the rat race of life, or you're letting the traumas and unhealthy emotions dictate your behaviors and who you are, you're robbing yourself of something very, very special. And that's something that I point out a lot to the people that I take out, even that listen to the podcast. You know, I do it through highlighting the adventure of the outdoors or the adventure of the unknown, but it also serves the purpose of kind of silencing the fear of the unknown that comes with life, giving you the opportunity to focus in on bringing your voice out and bringing the expression because you're learning from the experiences that you're gaining.
Right. Right. I love that. I love that a lot. I think it's very important for other people to hear others' perspectives as well, which is why podcasts are amazing.
And that's why I do them the way that I do with, you know, the campfire, is I put it in the middle because the campfire is a place that we all come for storytelling. We
Right.
come here for the joys and the excitement of roasting marshmallows, putting all the other things aside, and then you get to tease in those little nuggets of wisdom that are really essential to gaining ground on this journey of healing or growth or anything. Picking up that one little nugget of knowledge that's going to help you to go forward. And most of the time, when it's packaged in a way that it's fun, exciting, and adventurous, you don't even realize that it's happening. You're catching on, you're taking it in, but you're not realizing it because you're enjoying the work that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm jealous. I wish I did this all the time.
I think that's got to be actually the funniest part of doing it this way is the reaction that you get, because you know we all have that context that's been built and established. We sit down in a professional forum and we have these really dry conversations that we hope people get impacted by, but 9 times out of 10 they just scroll on to the next one because it's identical. And then when you go and you do something unique like this, it not only does it make you stop and think, but it opens up a different side of yourself. You want to let your shoulders down, put the cut and dry black and whiteness of that professional world aside, and actually open up and become vulnerable and mesh the stories together in a way that it not only helps and benefits the listener, but it also helps and benefits the participants.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm literally, I live for storytelling. I live for, and excuse me if you hear my dogs at the door. They are trying to get, they're like, wait, I hear you in there. Why are we not in there? But I live for storytelling. I used to be a teacher and I would tell my students a lot of stories and try to help them open up to tell their own stories and start to create these these well thought out ideas of who they are. And I think it's really important for people to have that experience. And also, when you hear other people, you're able to kind of reflect on their story and say, oh, I kind of relate to that. Let me add that to my story. And that's another thing that I think life is all about. It's about like creating your own story.
It is. And as you do that, like you mentioned, you hear a story, you pull it into your story. There and it helps you to go forward because you get a different understanding based off of the perspective that you have of what's being told. A few months back, I was actually sitting around a fire with a Potawatomi firekeeper who told me this beautiful story that I think can help just about anybody that I've told it to, because when it gets to the visual reminders of things, you encounter this all the time. In fact, you eat it all the time. The heartberry, also known as a strawberry. Their story goes that a long time ago there was two brothers that they kept getting into mischief, and they'd go to this one particular mountain that their mom would tell them not to go to because something bad was bound to happen. Well, one day one of the brothers fell off the mountain and died. Now, the surviving brother, he carried that for a long, long time, and he tore himself up over it. He would go back to that very spot every day, and he would sit and he would beat himself up, unable to let go or forgive. And one day he showed up, and in the middle of the field, overnight had grown this giant heartberry. And as he sat down and he picked it up and he touched it, in his heart he heard his passed away brother's voice telling him that I forgave you. Now it's time to forgive yourself. And reminders like that as we go through life, when we put our head down and we kind of disassociate and just do our tasks, when we see visuals like that after hearing a story, we're able to suddenly come back into it and realize, you know, I can let things go. I can grow. I can practice right this minute.
Yeah. I mean, I love that story. I think people don't realize the power of the universe and how we can have those experiences where our loved ones can come and relieve us of some pressure. And I think that's why the work that I do is so important because people don't realize the possibilities. We don't need to hold on to things that don't serve us. And it's really hard to let go, but sometimes people do feel that they need permission to let go. So yeah, that is a really nice story. Thank you for sharing.
I think that's something that we should actually stop and travel down a little bit. The idea that it requires permission and where we find that permission in order to let go of things that we're carrying.
I think that the correct answer, quote unquote, is that we should find that permission within ourselves. But I think that as humans, we are hardwired for external validation, and we almost like want or feel that we need the validation that it's okay to let go from someone else. Let's say you lost a brother and you want to let go of that pain. It's almost like you're looking for signs for that brother to say like, "Oh, like it's okay. You don't need to carry this anymore," instead of finding it within yourself. And it's really difficult to find that within yourself because it requires no ego, right? And that's hard. People don't want to let go of ego, and that's where the need for permission comes from, I feel.
I agree with you completely. And it gets back to that point that all the answers we're looking for are within our hearts if we're willing to explore it and accept it. And, as much as a conversation or storytelling can have its impact, I feel like having those physical reminders or going through a task and completing it successfully is also a great way to do that. And that's where, a lot of the outdoor skills that I teach along a journey doesn't exactly the aim isn't exactly so that I know that at the end of the trip you're going to be able to build a shelter, start a fire, and harvest food. It's to get you to go through the process and catch on to these things so that you can build a self worth based off of the physical experience of doing those tasks and knowing that in a situation you could do it.
So it sounds like you're doing it to improve or enhance one's intrinsic motivation, like
Most
the
definitely. I
I
know
want to
for
self, not for others.
I know for me that's exactly what it took in order to build back a sense of self worth after years and years and years of having it chipped away till it didn't feel like it existed. It was about realizing that I had those abilities and going out and doing them over and over again so I could see the fact that I could achieve something and find a level of mastery within the course of the process that not only taught me to start to trust myself again, but it taught me that I had value, that I had worth, and ultimately led me to be able to start to befriend and manage not only depression but also social anxiety.
I'm right there with you with all that. I had a really difficult childhood, and it wasn't until I found spirituality that I was able to pull myself up out from all of those low vibrational negative emotions and behaviors and patterns.
It's not to say that it's a challenge or not a challenge along the way. I mean, there's definitely obstacles that you have to overcome. There's definitely things that you have to experience and see in order to build a context that works for you when you're trying to befriend and manage those sort of things. But, what I really tend to start the focus of the journey on is the fact that we all are able to do these things. We don't have to have the latest and the greatest tools in order to navigate our way through successfully and unharmed. We can make do with the resources that we find along the way. And that's something that carries over into the day to day world too, because we always get so caught up in the fact that the definition of us is going to be the latest, greatest, and shiniest thing that we can afford to buy.
Right.
And when we don't have that or we can't achieve that, we look at somebody else and go, man, they're better than we are because of that. But the truth of the matter is, if you look at what's around you, you can build that latest and greatest thing on your terms to look the way that you truly want it to look.
Yeah, absolutely. We are the creators of our own lives. That's my favorite thing to say. We're
It's
the
an empowering thing.
right.
It's very empowering to know that you have that ability to do so. It's just a matter of finding a way to tease it out of yourself in order to become comfortable with it.
Right. Right. And also, I think it comes back to that permission thing, though. Like knowing that you have permission to create your own life and knowing that you have permission to set boundaries and have rules and carve out the things that you want to do. And that's not selfish. And I think that's what people have to learn.
And I think, that's one of those things that at the very beginning of the journey that seems so disempowering is the fact that the choices are yours to make.
Hmm.
I know I struggled with that because the change in my life came about during COVID where you'd have to go through a restaurant to get something to eat. And being homeless, obviously I didn't have a way to cook for myself at the time. So there was many nights that I'd go hungry because I couldn't do the simple things, make a choice, let alone try to express that choice to somebody as far as, making an order through a drive-through. And it really felt not only disempowering, but it felt like the world was coming down on me because of that. So I'm curious as to what you would say to somebody that came to you at that very stage and was looking for, that very first step along the journey.
Well, I will say that I think a lot of, so I was also homeless pretty much middle school and high school with my family. And I think that helped to inform the person that I became and the lack mindset that I had. So if someone is coming to me and they are at just rock bottom, they don't know where to start. This sounds so mundane, but it sounds mundane because it has to be. In my coaching, we start with the very basics of let's put you on a routine. Let's put you on a schedule. Let's put you on a routine so that you can start to show up for yourself in the physical. So that routine can look as simply as wake up, make my bed, make coffee, make a nutritious breakfast, then journal for 20 minutes, meditate for 20 minutes, and then go about my day. So when my clients come to me, I call them sacred rituals. So they'll have a morning sacred ritual routine and then an evening sacred ritual routine. And like I said, this is literally just like how do I start to show up for myself on the most basic level before I can start getting into some of the deeper spiritual concepts? So we establish a routine, and then at the same time, we establish a meditation routine. So I'm teaching them how to do the very basics of meditating. Literally meditate for 5 minutes a day. Meditate while you're brushing your teeth. Just do things that allow you to get into that, like I call it the flow state, and just like turn things off. Try to turn things off as much as possible, right? So this is called mindfulness. So mindful brushing your teeth, mindful eating, mindful taking a walk. Like these are the things that I would have them start to incorporate into their daily lives. Then we go into the negative self-talk and just figuring out what is negative self-talk, what is my intuition, what is ego. And those are like the three first steps to my program that are extremely important. How do I live as a human before I get to explore myself as a spiritual person?
I like that. And, it is a lot of the ritual things that kind of start to build. So they start to first form the lumber that you can use to build a bridge to get across a river. And it's not about taking massive logs and just heaving them across so that you think, so that you can crawl across the river. It's about taking the time to chop those logs down into smaller pieces so they're more manageable. So really, as you break the big picture down into smaller pieces, it brings back the ability to tap into that mastery.
Yep, yep, exactly. Exactly. We have to start small before you can go big. And I think that's why so many people are afraid of tapping into spirituality because they think everyone thinks this way about everything. Like if I take this thing on, I'm going to have to go hard and I'm going to have to like go all in and just jump in with both feet and sink. That's not how many things work in life. You don't need to do that. A lot of things can be simplified. And I think everyone, not everyone, but most people make things difficult so that they can get out of doing it. If you ask me, I think it's the easy way out. Like I'll have a lot of my clients tell me A, B, and C reasons why they couldn't do this thing that was a goal of theirs. And I'm like, those are literally all excuses. None of those things are real. All of those things are preventing you from doing this thing because you're afraid of failure. I am a very tough coach. It is, but I have to be. It's also just my personality. But that's just how I think people think, and I think we need to really pull ourselves out of having that thought process.
It's funny because I was actually just a little bit ago talking about the story of the wolf, and how he's evolved. We see him as this bloodthirsty killer, and we think that there's nothing else that can rival him in the world of hunting, but that's not true because in reality, he's faced many, many more failures than we would ever know. It was the lust for life that gave him the ambition and the drive to continue to go forward and continue to try. Because in reality, in his world, that failure, that represents death. He's gonna starve if he doesn't go out and succeed. So if he comes up short one day, he gets up and he tries again. Eventually, the laws of averages catch up and he succeeds. That's what we end up seeing. We don't see all the stuff that goes on out in the woods when nobody's around, and that's where it becomes critical for us. And we can learn so much from the journey of the wolf because all that stuff that we see on social media is all these victories, right, from everybody. And that's what we think that life is supposed to be. We don't see all the failures that go on behind the scenes. Sometimes I know personally I'll get around to making a video and I'll have to start over 10, 12 times because something went wrong. I'm not going to air any of that stuff. You're going to only see the parts of the video that move the point forward. And if we took time to embrace our own failures that happen, we could rejuvenate that lust for life, that lust to try and try until we get it right.
Yeah, I love failing. I love failing. I love getting things wrong. I always tell my friends I don't need to be right. I know that it may seem that I need to be right, but that is not who I am because I love to learn. I think failure makes you so much stronger. Life is not supposed to be perfect. No one is supposed to be perfect. And that's how I live my life. So yeah, you fail, you get back up and you keep going. That's life. But I think it's difficult. It's really hard when life is constantly getting you down and you're constantly falling and you're not seeing the path ahead. It's like, how do you get back up? And that's that like split second mental decision that you need to make to get up. And but it takes and I always tell my clients about this. I'm trying to configure like a name for this thing that I'm seeing in my head that I always talk about, that like split second desire to just say I'm going to do it. Like if you're laying in bed and then your alarm goes off, it's like all you need is split second to think yes, and then you get up out of bed. And I don't know what to call that yet. But I'll call
I
it
don't have I don't have a short name that pops into mind, but what pops into mind actually is a very long passage from the Meditations where Marcus Aurelius is struggling with that same point. You know, he's sitting there going, I'm laying here in bed. It's warm, it's toasty. I get out of this bed. I got to go deal with all this garbage that's going to come up through the day. And in order to find the motivation, he reminds himself that we're human. The work of a human is to get up and go through the course of the day, to contribute to the earth and to the world around him. And I think that's like one of the most beautiful representations of a self talk when it comes to finding the strength and the motivation to get out of bed is the beautiful reality of the human experience is a motivation enough to get up and get moving.
yes, but again, it's like I've been in the shoes where I did not want to get up out of bed for weeks, especially during COVID. I was in peak depression. It was just, I couldn't do basic things. I really struggled with just like self care on a very basic level. And it's hard. It's hard, but you need the constant reminder. And if no one's going to remind you to make that decision, then yeah, it's difficult. I haven't revisited meditations in a while, so you just mentioned it, and I think I'm gonna do that.
I love that book. I think I probably killed about 4 or 5 copies by carrying it in my backpack all the time, but I refer to that thing all the time. It's been such a powerful reminder, but also it was a life saving tool for me at one point
Yeah.
because back at the beginning, that was what helped me turn my perspective from I have these ideas of ending my life and it's terminal to if I could take all of this garbage on my shoulders right now and turn it into something positive and find my way back to my feet, then I would teach my children how to overcome adversity.
This is how I feel about Be Here Now by Ram Dass. I
We
love
all
that.
have that. We all have that like breakout type book. You know that breakout type moment where we read something and we're like, you know what? You're absolutely right.
Yep.
The way that I see it right now is because I'm down in the trenches, and if I just look up over the dirt and extend my hand, there's going to be somebody in the community that whether they're here now or they've come before or whatever is willing to put out their hand to help pull us back out.
Yeah. Yeah. There will always be someone who is going to be a mentor, someone to look up to. Like that's I mean, that's kind of what life is about too. It's self. creating community and shared experiences, and you know, I think that's what life's about.
It's about taming life in the face of fear, taming the world around you in the face of fear. Because if you think about the evolution of humanity, we went from living in this big, gigantic, scary world where everything around the corner was going to eat us to now the position that we have where we're not at the top of the dinner menu. We have more control over our environment, but yet we still struggle with a lot of the same trips and triggers that our ancestors did.
We do. Because it's the human experience no matter what. Even if we're filled with all the most greatest and up to date technology in 2045, I feel that we're going to be dealing with these same issues.
Absolutely, we're always going to have the anxiety and and fear. Those two things stopped our ancestors dead in their tracks so they could procreate. We could get here. So it's finding a new context for that trigger in order to make it useful nowadays. And I think it comes from befriending those feelings, those thoughts, and those emotions just as much as it is befriending yourself. And then when you start to get that friendship together, I think it starts to work into a bit of a hero type journey where you've overcome you had that first battle that knocks you down. Then you go through the process of arming yourself and equipping yourself for the next go around. And when we get to that final stage in the chasing a goal or a dream and we finally touch it, that's where the victory comes along.
Yes, I agree. I mean, Carl Jung talks about our shadows and how we should befriend our shadows in a sense, and all of those ugly parts of ourselves. That's a part of who we are. And the only way to combat those shadows or to deal with them is to make friends with them and to, yeah, begin to like understand the voice in your head. And the voice in your head is not the enemy, but it is definitely a hindrance at some point on some level. It's like your nagging friend that won't leave you alone, but like your friends because you enjoy them and they're a part of you. And you grew up together.
Yeah, you've known them, you fought with them just like your brother and sister, and then you get to a stage in life where all the stupid things you used to argue about disappear. So now you're closer because of everything you've been to or been through. And it works the same way internally.
Your campfire must agree because it's going crazy.
Well, I am actually starting to run out of timber on this one. So as we start to wind down and the fire's telling us it's about that time, let people know how they can get in touch with you and work with you and all that good stuff.
So I am Anastasia Anastasio, and I'm at thespiritualgoth.com, Instagram at thespiritualgoth, TikTok at thespiritualgoth. You can book a tarot reading with me, an oracle reading with me, a coaching session. I do past life regression therapy. I do mediumship, sound healing, Reiki energy healing. I kind of do everything spiritually. And I am also a teacher. I was a middle school, high school English teacher. So I'm always posting things to help you learn how to live a more spiritually aligned life.
Beautiful. It's been really great to get to sit down and pick your brain and get to know you a little bit. I would love to somewhere down the line do this again.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would love to sit by the campfire again.
That would be great. Well, I don't believe in the word goodbye. Sounds too final and too permanent. So until we meet again, whether it's in this life or the next, I hope you have a safe journey.
You as well.